Newman, Professor of Sustainability at Curtin University. He sat on the board of Infrastructure Australia and is the coordinating lead author for Transport on the IPCC. He's the author of several books, including Sustainability in Cities Overcoming Automobile Dependence, which was launched in the White House in 1999, an age ago, and Cities and Automobile Independence with Jeff Kenworthy in 1989, even further, which has been described as one of the most influential planning books of all time. He's also previously directed the production of West Australian Sustainable Strategy in the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and was the Sustainability Commissioner in Sydney. In 2014, Peter was awarded the Order of Australia for his contributions to urban design and sustainable transport, particularly related to the saving and rebuilding of Perth's rail system. And in 2018, he was the WA Scientist of the Year. In the past, Peter's also served as councillor of the city of Fremantle, where he lives today. And I remember speaking to you, Peter, because I did some background on Tiller Rides a couple of years ago. Remember that? I think we had a chat about that, which is a great organisation based where you live there with electric bikes. All right, Peter, you ready to go? You've got 10 minutes and very interested to hear what you have to say.
All right, well, I will share my screen and hopefully everybody can now see that. And I'm getting a bit better at zooming around now. So I'm going to talk about electromobility and start by saying that we are in an extraordinary period of history because of COVID. We all know that, but perhaps we don't see it as the great opportunity that it is. Because throughout our industrial history since 1785, the economists like Schumpeter and Kondratiev have seen that after each economic collapse, there is a burst of innovation that takes over the next economic boom. So we've had them since the 1840s depression, when the hard times, as they are called, and then the 1890s, which led to a lot of people coming to Western Australia because we had gold, then the 1930s and so on. The fifth wave is more the digital one, but we've still got a lot of the fourth wave still going. And all of this is now merging into a sixth wave. And that's what I want to talk about today. I have got a paper on this, which anyone can get from me. It's called COVID, Cities and Climate. It's about to come out in Urban Science. But the interesting thing is this term creative destruction by Schumpeter. This is what we can expect to occur. And the interesting thing about this is, if I can make it work, all right, is that the innovations that are ready are the ones that are likely to be adopted very quickly and take over. And for me, they are renewables, electromobility and smart cities. And I should say that this is what is coming through in our very extensive literature reviews we're doing as part of the IPCC. And the ones that are not yet ready, hydrogen, and particularly its role in industry, circular economy and biophilic urbanism, all great things, but not quite ready. They need lots more R&D and lots more demonstrations. And so the next phase, the three big ones, are solar with batteries, electromobility with batteries, and smart city integration. These three things fit together in what's called a cluster of innovations. That's what Schumpeter characterized this creative destruction. So you can see it happening now. Here's an example. This is the US power grid and the way in which coal has collapsed and renewables have already replaced it. It is a creative destruction that's happening now. And the interesting bit about this is that this is the same, it's happening in 41 other nations of the OECD. So coal is down 22%, solar is up 16%. These are extraordinary times that we're living through. Why is this happening? Because of the marginal cost when a demand drop occurs. So you got massive demand drop, and the coal system, you still have to pay for the fuel. You don't have to pay for the solar and wind, it's free. So the marginal costs are virtually zero. And that's why the systems are rapidly taking up. And the same in Western Australia, we are taking up renewables dramatically in the system. So the battery systems that are part of this are now rapidly taking over as well. The big battery in South Australia, it is now being shown to recoup its costs in 2 years. It is so successful. That 150 megawatts is a really a turning point in history, because, and now in California, they're going up to 300 megawatt community batteries or grid-based batteries. And they have a 1 second response, whereas gas turbines have a response of 6 seconds, and even less than a second for the batteries. And they're cheaper, so they are better. And that's why the systems are going to replace even peaking of gas. In Western Australia, the PV consumption growth in Perth was quite dramatic. It's now a third of households that have it, 1,200 megawatts. The biggest power station in Western Australia is now rooftop solar. The Minister for Energy in the previous government started accepting that this was a market force that needed to be enabled. And now we've got a lot happening that suggests by 2025, 70% of households will have this. And we've now learned how to do shared solar and batteries with the global first at White Gum Valley using blockchain. We've got lots of small scale things happening in rural areas like the Witscliffe Eco Village, which is being built at the moment near Margaret River. You've got this off-grid work, which is quite extraordinary, that's happening to reduce the size of the grid. And you've got remote settlements now finally doing what they could have done in the last 10 years. So WA is actually one of the world leaders in this, and we should embrace it, because they are creating distributed grids at a very rapid rate, much faster than the East, because they've got their big grid and they're feeding in big solar and wind farms and so on, but we're doing it through distributed means. And a lot of these reports that have now come out are setting the roadmap. And I think that's fantastic. What about transport? The batteries that are being purchased for storage are even more so happening for electro-mobility, as you can see here, the green. And this is not just cars, but cars, of course, are a very big part of it. But we've got this mid-tier transit, the trackless trams that I'll mention in a moment, and the micro-mobility of the things like the Segway produced little e-wheels and scooters and so on, which are now replacing their dinosaur that got announced this week to not be pursued. So you can see the electric vehicles are taking over very rapidly, and in the 2020s, you will not be able to buy gasoline and diesel-based vehicles. There is a similar creative destruction happening in the vehicle markets. All car sales are down, but the EVs have substantially increasing market share. And one of the reasons for that is that coronavirus is now discovered to be found on diesel particulates, which the EU are saying, well, that diesel must be removed by 2030. That's a short time. So there is also a big growth in micro-mobility and mid-tier transit. So how many battery electric vehicles are there, and how many hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are there? Well, there are 7 million passenger electric vehicles on the road today, along with the other forms, the 500,000 e-buses. Canberra's completely replacing all their buses with electric buses. 400,000 electric delivery vans and 184 million of the micro-mobility, with enormous growth rates associated with it. The truck BEVs are rolling out, with around a 400-kilometre range, and I'll show you more on that. The hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, there is a mere 7,500 of them. And there's a good reason for that, because they're not ready. The systems are not ready. And I think it's important to see that. They are 3 times the cost of battery electric vehicles, even with the light vehicles that are ready. And there's no easy distribution system like the power grid, and there's not enough green hydrogen. So they're not good for cities. But what I'm going to say is they are potentially there for long haul heavy trucks, and that's where things are heading. But last night in my IPCC call, I asked the Toyota people on it, when would they be ready? They said, 2040 should be ready. And I thought, well, we've got a while to wait. That's not very encouraging. However, we have got this remarkable thing of the hydrogen for rural and regional development, which will be mostly about industry and making it locally. I asked how many electric battery Class 8 trucks there are, and they gave me a list of 13, including the Nikola truck, which is now coming out before their hydrogen fuel cell truck. And they're the ones who were really pushing the hydrogen. So I'm not being very encouraging for hydrogen in mobility at this stage. I'm sure I'll hear some responses to that. But the electro-mobility is going bananas, and we can set up recharge hubs around them, which are very important. We can have stations and parking areas and so on covered with PVs that feed back into the grid, and recharge vehicles and the vehicles themselves can also. So we've got a new era of relocalization happening, smart technologies integrating solar batteries and EVs into the system. And this is happening at our East Village. It's one of the best and first to do this. It's underway. There are many other precincts that are ready to go as part of this recovery. I know about 10 in Perth and Western Australia in general that are going to have this combination of solar, electromobility and smart systems that can enable them to fit together. It's a system, it's very cost effective. And the final slide is this. We've got a group that's called EMUs, Electromobility and Urban Systems. The integral sign is because they need to be integrated. And that's the next big agenda. We've got links with the Department of Transport, the RAC, who want to help us do tests, Western Power, bus operators, and many local governments who are keen to be part of this. We need lots more stakeholders. You can join this organisation if you email me. And we certainly have got a long way to go, but we are starting on this journey, and it's a very exciting one. We need a trial in Perth, and all the other cities we're working in are now saying, please do a trial on the trackless tram in Perth. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. That was fabulous. Really interesting. We'll take questions at the end. I see some Q&As already coming in, responding to Peter's talk there, but we'll do sort of half an hour for questions at the end. We're just going to go through the speakers first. But that was a really good background on the topic for today. Now I'd like to go to the second speaker, Colleen Yates. Colleen, you've already heard from already. She's the chair of Lithium Valley, an initiative driven by the West Australian companies that are dedicated to facilitating and enabling the development of secondary and tertiary processing of lithium and other critical raw materials in Kwinana, just south of Perth. Since 2013, Colleen has been the CEO with the Regional Development Australia Perth, an organisation delivering initiatives to drive new business investment and job growth for the Perth region. Like me, she holds a UWA MBA, very good, and is on the board of a number of organisations. Colleen, welcome, over to you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Let me get my presentation up here. All righty, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been happening since the launch of the Lithium Valley Report, which took place now 2 years ago, and the new initiative that we're now working towards. We have formed Lithium Valley Incorporated, and we're working, to establish Lithium Valley Park, which is a focused on power storage and in the Kwinana district, and looking at, with that, building battery cells. Oops, there we go. A lot of this drive to look at this has been through a number of conversations that we have had in 2019 when we went to present to the EU Commission. And what we were being told by companies over there is that in order for them to engage, they need to be offered some assurity that we're moving toward zero carbon supply chains, because in Europe, they've actually got policy that is looking at moving towards zero carbon by 2050. So, they're quite dedicated to this. And for us, we feel that in working with the Western Trade Coast, where the new port is going to be located here in the near future, we need to establish a world-class industrial park that does focus on inputs and outputs that reduce that carbon footprint. So, we feel this is essential, and it will be attractive to invest, attract that business investment from overseas into Western Australia. In terms of the numbers around battery cell production, you can see that it's definitely a growing industry. In Australia, we're still pretty much at the mine concentrate level, where we ship our spodumene off, in particular to China, for it to be processed into hydroxide, and from South America into carbonate. We're really pushing hard through the Lithium Valley Initiative to actually move further up the value chain. We do have now, out of the top 4 conversion facilities of hydroxide, 3 of them are now located here. 2 of them are in Kwinana, and the 3rd one is down at Kemerton. As you guys are also aware, the electrochemical production, we've got a lot of activity there in terms of the Future Battery Industry CRC, and a number of the programs that they have been looking at in terms of the research that needs to be done. A lot of it is in the chemistry of the battery, so looking at that IP around battery cell production. And we're already doing battery assembly pack and systems. We have Masood here today. He makes really fantastic standalone systems, and he'll talk a bit further about that. But we feel that power storage is where we need to focus, not so much on battery cells for vehicles, but power storage. It's going to be a lot bigger than the vehicle batteries in moving into the future. So the Lithium Valley Initiative is all about really pushing to create that opportunity here in Western Australia. And as you can see, if we are successful, it will create a significant amount of jobs for our young people into the future. So in looking at how to do this, we've spent a bit of time talking to a number of companies, and we basically have identified there's 2 ways to go about this. One is to engage with established cell production companies and get them to locate here in Australia. Or the second one is to secure IP licensing that has reached end of pilot stage and is ready to scale up. There's not a lot of interest from the bigger organizations in this space, mainly because their response is Australia's population in terms of electric vehicles just doesn't have that capacity. And so, there's not a lot of interest for them to look at locating here. So we're moving along the lines of looking at option number 2 in terms of securing the IP. And, hopefully we'll be able to make some announcements here shortly regarding some of that, which will be very interesting. And basically, this is the whole process, and our estimates in terms of building a 1 gigawatt facility for cell production is around 162 million Australian dollars, and this is what we're targeting. We also feel that to grow our industry here, we need to consider a domestic reservation, which would be established for companies that are looking at cell manufacturing. And it's not just only with the lithium, but there are other energy metals out there that we might need to take a look at. But this will help us grow our industry to offer some assurance that they have access to the resource. This has been done with gas, so we feel that it could also be done with the energy metals. Another thing that we're looking at doing is working with a number of people to establish an innovation hub down at Rockingham. As I said, the FBI CRC, there's quite a few projects in terms of looking at the ores and oxides and the chemistry with the battery cells. But what we want to do is look at that other bit, which is around the modules, which then get built into the power storage systems. And so we want to start to look at the opportunity to have a battery testing facility that's not about the cells, but it's about the modules, because the needs for those modules are completely different in terms of, they're having to process loads and carry loads, and so they'll have the battery cells, but the modules we're really going to be focusing on. So, and then grow from there. And so we're looking at working in the first instance with Murdoch University down at Rockingham, and hopefully we'll be able to progress that, here in the near future. And I'd like to invite you guys all. We've got a celebration, Lithium Valley 2 years on. That's coming up July 23rd, 2020. So we're going to have the formal launch of Lithium Valley Inc. We've got fabulous speakers coming on board, domestic and internationally. We'll have an update on the number of companies that have actually moved into Western Australia since the launch of the report. And believe it or not, Lithium Valley's gone international. I recently saw a Swiss YouTube show where I couldn't understand anything what they were saying because I can't speak the language, but I did understand when they said Lithium Valley. We'll have some networking going on, and as I said, some announcements will be made. So if you want to keep up to date, join the Lithium Valley Initiative at www.lithiumvalleywa.com.au, and we'll keep you posted on what's happening. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Colleen. That was great. I didn't know Lithium Valley was 2 years old. Wow, that's flown by. And very good plug at the end. Excellent call to action. So Lithium Valley WA, was it .com.au?
That's correct.
All right, lovely. Thanks for that. On to our third speaker. Masood Abzar is the founder and CEO of Magellan Power for the past 23 years. He has a master's degree in power electronics and over 32 years of experience in design and manufacture of power converters and uninterruptible power supplies. After emigrating like me from the UK for fresh opportunities, he saw that there was a distinct lack of opportunity for engineers in the power electronics industry in WA, which motivated him to start the company. Since its inception, Magellan has grown from a one-person, one-product company to the team it is today, employing research and development engineers, technicians, accountants, project managers, business development managers, and more. So, Masood, over to you. And you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me properly now, and you can see my screen, which I'm sharing now. Not sure. Are you seeing my screen?
No, not at the moment. Just seeing your lovely face.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Just hold on. Sorry, let's let me. Can you see it now?
Still no.
No? Okay.
Are you using two monitors? Sometimes it appears on one monitor.
Yeah, not sure.
And then you think you're sharing it. Ah, now something's happening.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, good afternoon to everyone. I'm Masood, and I'm the managing director of Magellan Power. As I wasn't introduced, I started my business in power electronics nearly 30 years ago. So it's 29 years, nearly 30. And I came as an electronic engineer from UK. I had experience in designing, and I just wanted to do design work and produce things. Unfortunately, at the time, there was hardly any opportunity for me to do that. So I started Magellan Powertronics, and the aim was always to keep me interested, which meant designing and producing things. And I really do believe that that's the only way that you can really bring technology to a society, by actually manufacturing. So Magellan Powertronics started in 1991, and we produce everything to do with batteries. We've got really good research and development department. We've got engineering department, manufacturing department, and so it's a complete company and producing business, which is at the moment expanding. A lot of it due to the fact that this new wave of energy storage has started. So that's what we are doing, and we're enjoying ourselves. So what we manufacture is, as I said, everything that we do is to do with power electronics and batteries. So that's all we do. In the top layer of the picture, you can see all of the industrial AC and DC backup systems. So again, power electronics and batteries. And at the bottom, you can see the energy storage and microgrid and so on. And our motto is to make products that last for years. You know, Australia is a very big country. And if you are making something that goes few thousand kilometers away, well, you want to make sure that that thing works so that your customer is happy and you can carry on making things. So whatever we make is made with reliability in mind, and whatever we make has got 25 years design life. So that means that this equipment will be in service for 25 years. And we keep all the spares and everything to make sure it does. Our customers are mining, industrial processing, healthcare, infrastructure, utilities. So they all need backup power. They all need batteries. So today I'm just going to talk about the standalone power systems, and mainly its application in mining, and describe what a standalone power system is and what the components of it are, and where we could use hydrogen supplement this. So this is a typical, I hope you're seeing it, typical standalone power systems using using solar power. So you've got solar panels which are producing DC voltage. That DC voltage is converted to AC voltage, and then through the through what we call microgrid is fed to a load. So, however, that solar inverter by itself can't work because it can't produce the grid. You need something to produce the grid. And therefore, we've got something called the multi-mode inverter. This is a bidirectional inverter which creates the grid. And then this inverter can latch onto that and start producing power into that, very much like the solar panels on people's homes that feed into the grid. So that produces a local grid, if you like. Then for charging, it feeds that power into batteries, and for discharging into the grid, it gets the power from the batteries through the multi-mode inverter, which is the bidirectional inverter, and the microgrid ties all of that together. Now, if the sun doesn't shine or something happens to any of those sources of energy, then the generator can come on. So it is there to make sure that there is always energy around, and that if, for example, there is a failure as well, it can bypass the whole thing and feed the customer. So we talked about the batteries. Now, what are these batteries? These batteries are lithium batteries. We use many types of lithium batteries, but what you can see in here is a battery module. So Colleen talked about battery module, and hopefully we will be manufacturing battery module on large scale. But these battery modules are a collection of batteries and a lot of electronics that are put together, and they look like this. Normally, batteries are just electrochemical devices with two terminals, positive and negative. By themselves, they don't do anything. When you put them into a battery module, then it starts working with your power conversion, and it starts actually giving you information about itself. So we need the battery modules. You put these battery modules together, and then you put a cooling in there because Australia is hot, and then you can start storing energy. Now, if you just make a one battery module, it's probably at 48 volt, it can't do very much. So you need to stack this up in what's known as a rack, battery rack. So you make something like 1,000 volts out of that before you can convert it back. So, but it depends on the type of application. For example, some very small standalone power systems, it doesn't need 1,000 volt. It can start from 48 volt, but the more power, the higher the voltage has to go. And this is a rack. And as you can see, there is something like, 14 or 15 of those, and they're 50 volt each. So 750 up to 1,000 volt, then you can convert that to, that's still DC, you convert it to AC, and then it can do things. There are many types of lithium batteries around. These are just some of them, and this summarizes what the difference between them are. And if you can see in this spider diagram, there is a specific energy, there's a specific power, safety, performance, and so on. And you can see some of them are all rounder, which is like that one and that one. This one is NMC, which is lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt. And this one is a lithium iron phosphate. So we use these two because of all roundedness of them. And the cost is good. For example, this one is a very, very good battery, but the cost is this low means bad. So the cost is not good. The cost is high, but it is fantastic for performance and safety and every other thing. Then you need, in a standalone power system, you need to make the grid, and that is done by the bidirectional inverter, which is this, which we are very proud to make our own. So we make sure that we make everything. We want the local knowledge and local jobs and local economy to benefit from what we are doing. And so we make all of these things ourselves. So this bidirectional inverter, it gets the power from whatever the solar panels and the solar inverters are making. It then it puts it into the grid, or forms the right puts it into the battery, or forms the right grid for the load. And without this, the solar inverters can't work in a standalone power system. They can work in a suburb because there is already a grid, but this is actually a grid of the solar of a standalone power systems. This is a solar inverter.
Masood, sorry to interrupt, Charlie here.
Yep.
Do you want to present in full slideshow mode? We've just had someone ask so they can see all of it. Just go to slideshow and go view slideshow. The moment we're seeing it in Windows sort of out, go up a bit, go to slideshow.
Slideshow, hold on.
Across slideshow, one of the top menus, keep going. There, yep.
Okay.
And go from current slide. If you click from current slide on the left. From current slide, no, into the little sub menu.
Right.
The sub menus from current slide, yep.
Is that
from
better?
there. And you've taken 10 minutes. Do you have a lot more to go?
And not a lot more.
Okay.
So
just trying to get through everybody. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so can you see it better now?
Much better. Thanks.
Okay, so that's what you will then have, and this is a standalone power systems. So which you can see the solar panels and everything. So that is a completed standalone power system. You by increasing the amount of batteries and everything, you get bigger ones. So that's a bigger one, and yet bigger one than that. So it just goes on until it gets to the mining and utilities and so on. So this is another standalone power system with the batteries. You can see this is inside a container. I'll try and be fast. Now, standalone power system. This is a power station actually in Onslow. So that power station obviously will have its own generators, which are on the right, and you have energy storage, which is make this system a standalone power system. And then there is solar farm, which is next to that. So this is in Onslow. This is more energy storage. This is megawatt type of energy storage that we've made as well. This goes into utilities and mining and so on, and that's what they look like. Now they can be used for telecommunication application. Again, from small 2 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt hour, all the way to 200 kilowatt hour. Once again, exactly the same formula. So you also have DC type of standalone power system. Now you don't have a grid, you just have DC. So the power from the solar panels go into the batteries, and then you use that DC, which is much more reliable. You could use the same type of solar and battery for water pumping system. So we make those and we sell them to Africa. And more application, even things like single wire earth return, which is a long transmission of single wire, and we've got lots of them, 200,000 kilometers of that in Australia, and that has a lot of problem. Again, solar and energy storage makes a perfect power from that. And these are some of the projects that we did. And that's about it. I'm sorry it took too long, but there we are.
No, thanks, Masood. That's great. We've got 6 speakers to get through, so I'm trying to be a bit strict on time. But thank you very much for that. You were very much an early innovator if you're into batteries in 1991.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if you are in the technology, then you can move a lot faster.
Right.
When the time comes.
Thanks for that. All right. I'd like to introduce Florian Popp. Florian, our next speaker, is the co-founder of Gemtech Group. Florian has a Bachelor of Commerce, Marketing and Finance from Curtin University. Beginning his career working with Grey Group in Germany, mentoring brands like Porsche Design, Mercedes, Black & Decker. He returned to Australia to work as an export manager for a local technology innovator and manufacturer, Arbitech. Here he successfully established an Asian and European supply and client base with companies such as Stihl and DeWalt. Florian has over 25 years experience in market analysis, strategic planning, BD, and business management, starting his own import and wholesale company in 2013, selling it in 2003, and selling it in 2008. He joined Gemtech as a founding partner and commercial director in 2008. We welcome Florian, the co-founder of Gemtech Group. Florian.
Hi, thank you, Charlie. That's a fantastic introduction.
We're looking at your email.
No, that's not mine. That's somebody else's.
Your emails for some reason.
That's somebody else's email.
Better unshare, Masood. There we go. So sharing going on.
I'll just wait for Masood. But yes, my name's Florian, and I'm one of the directors at Gemtech Group. I did study at Curtin, and we still have a long history at Curtin, having completed projects with Curtin, such as the White Gum Valley microgrid, and just about to launch the East Village project. But basically, Gemtech is an electrical and communications consultancy, as you can see on the screen, specializing in embedded network resource metering, data management systems, and electric vehicle infrastructure. That's one of our car chargers down at East Village, and the particular artwork on this one was designed by Shane Yondi Hansen, and tells the story of fire and water. And we really see electric vehicles as not just an opportunity to improve, obviously, the sustainability of transport and reduce the emissions of transport, but through the technology, we also have the ability to connect destinations with drivers to share energy and the stories of the destinations. So Peter gave a great outline, obviously, of the waves of evolution. And if we look at just the last 15 years or so, there were 3 things that happened between 2007 and 2009. The iPhone was released in 2007, the Tesla Roadster was launched in 2008, and the NBN was tabled in Parliament in 2009. And today we all have smartphones, we're all about to jump into electric cars, but we have very poor internet. So if we look at some of the investment that's currently going into the automotive sector, it is literally in the billions of dollars. And we can certainly see that. I'm actually coming to you today from the Chamber of Commerce in Collie, where we're looking at some the potential for a large grid-connected battery and hydrogen facility. But if we look down the road at what's happening in Greenbushes, Kemerton and Kwinana, and the work that the guys at Lithium Valley are doing, I mean, we really are at the center of the battery revolution globally in Western Australia. So if we bring that back to what is happening in transport and how we see the combination of lithium and hydrogen working in Western Australia specifically, there are various predictions for the uptake rates of electric vehicles, and there have been some reports released. But if we just look at last week's AEMO statement of opportunities, there's actually a huge variance predicting as low as 100,000 electric vehicles on WA's roads by 2030 to up to as high as 500,000, which is a huge variance in that prediction. So what we require at the moment is some focus, and there's a lot of work going on in Western Australia through the DER roadmap and the climate policy and the EV working group at state government to look at the numbers and really, I guess, in a pragmatic and methodical way, prepare for that transition in an effective way. If we look at some of the more recent data, and Peter pointed to this as well, inquiries for electric vehicles in February on car sales increased by 634%. At the same time, in the last 12 months, we've seen a huge reduction in petrol car sales. And in the first quarter of this year in California, the Tesla Model 3 outsold all other passenger cars. So we're now seeing that the electric mobility transformation is really a demand-driven event rather than just a supply push event. And if we look at that in terms of trying to measure some of that demand, we can see very clearly the reduction in car sales of fossil fueled vehicles, whereas, and albeit it's from a very low base, electric and hybrid vehicles are literally up in 3-figure digits. So we're looking at growth of, in Western Australia alone, since the release of the Model 3 in September, 300 new electric cars on the roads just from the Model 3. So how do we, I guess from our perspective, we're infrastructure focused. So what we really look at is Main Roads data and where we need infrastructure. And Main Roads has some fantastic tools to measure where the cars are driving. But there are also some perceptions, I guess, that we're overcoming in Western Australia. We're a V8 and Land Cruiser driven culture. Councillor Roy from Merredin, who's recently purchased a Hyundai Kona, himself said, I don't need an electric car charger in town because I live here. And he literally wakes up every morning with his car fully charged off his home power point. So on a grid scale though, we are really working to try and figure out how we can make people charge during the day so that we can use the power of the batteries and the storage capacity that we have to absorb the sunshine during the day and load shift that back to the evening peak. So what are we looking at specifically? At the moment for fast charging, we are looking at 1 megawatts per site. So that's based on 6 175 kilowatt heads, which are moving to 350 kilowatt charging heads to recharge a car which is empty in 10 minutes. And this is where we really see hydrogen and lithium storage, given that most of our roadhouses in WA are in poor power locations. We really see microgrids as the solution to that. Currently, we are using diesel generators, and we've actually converted quite a couple of units now to vegetable oil. So we're using the recycled vegetable oil from the roadhouses to power the car, chargers to charge the car, which is still 100% carbon neutral. But at the same time, we are trying to move into battery and other forms of storage and have prototypes and battery-backed systems, but the cost is still relatively expensive. And then obviously we are working on quite extensively at the moment on vehicle-to-grid technology, particularly at a policy and regulatory level, so that we can utilize the storage capacity of mobile batteries in vehicles to bring back into the built environment. So using our current diesel sites, we're looking at a cost of $75,000. Again, as I said, we use recycled fryer fat to generate the power. And we're slowly trying to decrease the amount of diesel that we use and increase the amount of battery, solar, and potentially hydrogen storage. You can see on the left there some of the prototypes that we're currently testing, including our solar battery trailer. And obviously the mining vehicle that you see there, this has huge applications in the mining space because a lot of it is off-grid, and there is a lot of work currently going into the electrification of mining in general to adopt renewable energy and storage. So to put that into context and without getting too complicated, the vehicle to grid systems really are at the forefront of our development list at the moment, and to integrate that into the Western Power and Synergy system at the moment and into the DER roadmap as it unfolds. Masood has already spent some time to cover the microgrids, and on that basis, really, we also see hydrogen as a really important part of the solution for our long-haul traffic and remote microgrids in our agricultural and mining areas, where the roads are obviously very long, and our grid is a little bit short. And there's already been companies like Siemens, Schneider, Hydrogenics have done extensive piloting of hydrogen-backed microgrids around the world. And the International Microgrid Association is actually based in Perth. So we are the global centre of microgrid development right here in WA. We know that this is all coming. All fleets in Europe are converting to hydrogen and electric mobility. We're currently working towards a project here in Perth for electric bus trials. Hyzon Motors have announced that they will bring their first hydrogen trucks to WA by the end of the year. And of course, we're all waiting for Tesla's Cybertruck and semi-truck, which will revolutionize off-road vehicles and trucking using electric mobility. A key part for us is also to ensure that the community comes along this journey. We do have a Fleet Industry Day in October, where we really, it's about bums on seats and getting our local motoring community to experience how these vehicles work, because in the end, it's about fear, and they are just cars. So there is a technical component to what we do, but there's also the hearts and minds of people that we have to take along on that journey. And another thing that we do very actively in WA and our world first is to participate at the local Targa events with electric vehicles. So Targa West was the first FIA sanctioned Targa event in the world to establish an electric vehicle class, and we have actively participated in that since 2016. And this year are sitting second in class against a petrol field, and we've already heard a lot of Commodore drivers changing to a Model 3 because we're faster. I'm not sure how I'm going on time. Another part of obviously what we do that's really critical is to make sure that the education and training and the skills development in the sector is taken along, because from our point of view, at an industrial or commercial level, we can put this technology out there. The manufacturers can supply the cars, but without the necessary service capabilities at a vocational level to actually be able to repair, maintain, and keep the fleet moving, so to speak, Western Australia will have a poor user experience. So we work across the sectors with obviously lots of community partners and commercial partners in Western Australia to try and bring the education component where it's needed. An apprenticeship generally takes 4 years. And a university degree takes around 4 years to complete. So it's really critical that we make sure that our education institutions are engaged in this technology, not just obviously at the product development or the mining edge, but also in the practical knowledge, which is mechanics, service technicians who can fix cars and keep this fleet going. And that's where I'll leave it.
Beautiful. Yeah, just over 10 minutes, but that's fine. We're about only 3 minutes out from my schedule, so we're not doing too badly. And Peter's smiling, so that's good. Thanks for stopping the share. Now we're going to move to Speaker number 5, Farhat Dawood. He's the founder of the Hydrogen Energy Group, H2E, and is a Vice President of Hydrogen Society of Australia. Farhat is an electrical engineer since 1987. He's completed a master's degree in communication engineering in 1996. Having worked as an engineer for many years, he began to develop a passion for renewable energy. This passion led him to pursue a postgrad diploma in renewable energy from Murdoch in 2016. He's now pursuing a PhD in hydrogen energy. The highlight of his time at university so far has been his participation in many international conferences, presenting and publishing research papers. In addition to current full-time studies, he maintains an active presence in the hydrogen industry space. He's the Vice President of the Hydrogen Society of Australia and the founder of Hydrogen Energy Group, H2E. Farhat, looks like you're ready to go. Over to you.
Hi everyone, thanks Charlie for the introduction. I hope you can see my screen now.
All looks good, yep.
Yep, okay. So thank you for all the previous presenters. They make it so easy for me just to take you to another avenue about hydrogen. So they said a lot about how good the batteries are. And I'm going to say something about hydrogen. So in the fight against climate change, hydrogen and clean energy became high in global political and economical agendas, and also among the scientific community. Lithium and hydrogen have been gained a tremendous momentum, actually, as a viable solution to shift from fossil fueled economy to a low emission economy. So I'm going to take you through a case study to show how they can complement each other as batteries and hydrogen and not competing against each other. So renewable energy is the way to go. And the problem, like very well known, is the intermittent and variable nature of all renewable resources, especially like solar and wind. And that's raised the necessity for a storage system. And the conventional way is to use batteries. And in our case, it's a lithium-ion battery. And the batteries or the storage system is to shift the renewable energy generated power on different time scales, like hourly, daily, and sometimes we need it seasonally. The conventional way is to use batteries, pumped hydros, mechanical, compressed air, etc. Each one of them got their own merits, but all of them have technical challenges and limitations. So the classic trend of using batteries like lithium-ion batteries turned out doing well in the cases where the renewable energy penetration into the energy system is low. And they proved that they work well, like in a short time discharge duration and in a small and medium scale storage systems. They are really well and techno-economically viable and cost-effective solutions. So that means if we are not heading towards 100% renewable energy, batteries will do the job perfect. These technical challenges to jump to 100% renewable energy raise the necessity for a new approach to store the energy in a different way, in a large-scale way, and for longer discharge duration, so we can store the renewable energy seasonally. The innovative idea of storing renewable energy in an energy carrier, such as hydrogen, which is storable and transportable, exportable, utilizable, and that encouraged interest around the world in the recent years. But why hydrogen? Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. it is combustible, and much higher energy density by weight compared to most of the conventional fuels. However, we cannot find hydrogen in its pure form anywhere. So we have to put some energy to extract it from hydrogen-containing compounds like water, hydrocarbons, and that's why hydrogen is an energy carrier rather than an energy source. And to have a bit of an idea about why we are heading towards hydrogen, hydrogen can be produced from a very low or zero emission pathways, especially like if you are using renewable energy and water splitting or electrolysis, or even biological chemical pathways, some of them very low emissions or zero emissions. Also, hydrogen is a storable. So that's can be done in so many different ways, but basically it's a physical based. So we can store it as a gas or liquid by liquefying it, or store it in underground salt caverns for very large scale capacities. The other way to store the hydrogen in a material-based methods via adsorption or absorption. Another way is to store it chemically into a hydrogen carrier like ammonia, methane, toluene, etc. And so that flexibility, it's actually giving us also the next step is how to utilize it in a flexible way. So hydrogen can be utilized to regenerate electricity, or like used as a direct fuel, or use it for generate heat or industrial, or making new compounds like fertilizers, ammonias, green ammonias, etc. Now, the more percentage of renewable energy penetration into any grid or standalone system raise up the necessity for a bigger or larger scale energy storage, or otherwise you will have a problem with the stability and reliability of the grid, or any other like microgrid or standalone system. So when we talk about 100% penetration, then the question is how big the storage required. And that's through my PhD studies, I came across a case study, and I published a paper earlier this year on this one. It is about a specific case study about 100% renewable energy penetration to a standalone microgrid system. So we modeled that one, but it's all theoretical, so it's a desktop study. And we published a paper on that. And the idea was to use both systems as a battery combined with the fuel cell system. So the battery, for its own merits, the good point is the quicker response can give a very much higher current for a short time, the higher efficiency. So it's good to catch up or cover the peaks of the load or the fluctuations, while the fuel cell, it's much longer, using hydrogen is much longer discharge duration. You can store the energy for seasons, and almost comparably unlimited capacity, because what you need is more tank to store more hydrogen there. And also the depth of discharge, you can consume all the hydrogen. So hydrogen fuel cell will act as a base load generator and let a smaller battery to just follow the peaks of the load. And that will make the system much more stable and reliable, and at the end it's a zero emission. We've done desktop simulation for this model, And as you can see in the graphs, that it's exactly doing what's it's supposed to do. So the green plot is the fuel cell, which is acting a flat for as a base load. Then any fluctuation is the red plot. That's the response of the lithium-ion battery. So follow all the fluctuations of the load there. But this model actually just evaluated the differentiation component between this system and the conventional system. So we didn't take in account any civil work, any power poles, the transmission lines, transformers, the rest of it. So we designed 3 scenarios. One of them to replace the diesel generators. One of them is when we use a solar PV with a battery only. That's S1. Then we modeled another one, which is a PV system with hydrogen only. And then the S3 is a PV system with a hybrid battery, a smaller battery, and a hydrogen system. And the simulation shows that S3, which is the hybrid system, when we combine the batteries with the hydrogen, it's the least cost of energy as $1 per kilowatt hour, and the least curtailed or wasted renewable energy, because batteries by itself, and let us remember here, we are talking about 100% renewable energy. So also the autonomy, how many hours we have a spare reserve of hydrogen or electricity in the battery, it's much more viable solution to have the hybrid system, which can give us a very long accumulated hydrogen can be used for longer autonomy. Now, to have an idea, this is again was a desktop study, and showed that the cumulative discount cash flow showed a very promising payback period, which is around 6 years for this system to replace the diesel generators. We also simulated the sensitivity of the cost of the diesel, which is $1.5 per liter. That's including the transport and to the remote areas, $2, $2.5. And this actually led the hydrogen team at Murdoch University to propose a case for a selected indigenous community in the Pilbara region at the northwest of WA to replace their current diesel generators with 100% renewable energy. And hydrogen team at Murdoch University has granted a fund from WA government to do a feasibility study for this pilot project. And this pilot project model, it's designed for a specific selected spot or a community at the Pilbara region for about a daily load of about 2 megawatt hours. And that's about 100 dwellings, plus some community centers, medical centers, some other venues. And this is the model here. And we're gonna start do the, or we already started doing the feasibility study, and this should lead to a full implementation by the end of the year, early next year. And the full implementation of this system, it's actually a roadmap for the new era of energy, water, waste nexus way of thinking towards a smart cities development. And to complete the autarkic picture, we can utilize the hydrogen as a gas down. So it's not just for power, it's for gas energy. Also to charge electric vehicles or a fueling station, hydrogen fueling stations. And also the solar PV or the renewable energy can be utilized to desalinate some water for these settlements. So it's a good avenue for the future development of smart cities. And that's what I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for that. That was fascinating. Okay, we'll introduce the last speaker and then we'll have a bit of Q&A. So pop your questions into the Q&A section and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can. Peter Kasperschak, you've heard from him up the front. We all know Peter, president of the Hydrogen Society and co-founder and CEO of Innovate Australia. Over his career, Peter's gained experience in Europe, US, Australia, in the fields of emerging technology, automotive industry, energy, environment, and financial services. Peter's been a director of a number of companies, ranging from geophysics to manufacturing electric vehicle charging stations. He's also headed up the CRC bid to create the Sustainable Electric Transport Cooperative Research Centre. He's a past president of the Inventors Association of Australia. Of course he is. He heads Zero Emission Highway Group, a concept which combines hydrogen refueling infrastructure with battery charging infrastructure to allow zero emission heavy transport across the entire state of WA. And every time I go on LinkedIn, I see him post, "Hydrogen March is on." Here he is, Peter. You're on mute, mate. Okay, you're on mute.
Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, thank you for such an introduction. Okay, yeah, thanks. I'm gonna start my time. Thank you for the opportunity. Look, what I want to talk to you about, it's a little bit about what the ethos of this event is, lithium and hydrogen, and many of you know I'm a strong supporter of two technologies working together, and tell you a little bit about how we're implementing that idea by creating zero emission highway, as you can see on this slide, combining hydrogen highway and electric highway into zero emission highway. So tell you a little bit, okay, where this came from. So Innovate Australia, it's 5.5 years old, and Innovate Australia runs events like this one, usually face-to-face, but also creates sort of creative programs, usually for some social value. One of those programs actually a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, created Hydrogen Society of Australia as an interest group. Eventually it grew to the point when it became a separate organization. So, and the main project of Hydrogen Society of Australia, it's actually started as a hydrogen highway, but always the idea was, even in early materials you can see, it's always to put, add to it, allow electric vehicle, battery electric vehicle to actually participate in it. So, so I want to tell you a little bit from where it came from. I actually, 10 years ago, there was a trial of electric vehicles and in Perth, and as a member of Electric Vehicle Association, then I started a company called EV Charge, and we actually had 3 really smart guys with me who we created the first charging stations here in Perth, although we didn't win the bid, and eventually we sold the technology to another company. But in the process of doing that, we actually pitched the first hydrogen highway here from Perth to Margaret River, which later, after we moved out from the field, was picked up by University of WA, Thomas Brown, and then eventually by RAC built this hydrogen highway, electric highway right now, which exists. And I was just recently Margaret River, and yes, it's all working there. Now, there is also we were putting Sustainable Electric Transport CRC at that time. So again, but that was supposed to be including both. So that was 10 years ago. We're talking about hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles already. And if you don't think that's true, I can show you. This is a website which is still there, although it's ancient. It's it's broken links, but hydrogen.com.au, and you know, and you can see, which my wife wasn't very impressed when I bought 2 license plates 10 years ago, FCEV, fuel cell electric vehicles, and fuel cell, and they're still sitting in waiting for vehicles to come here. So, that's the background, but that's why we created zero emission highways. So zero emission highway basically to allow heavy transport in Western Australia to travel across from Albany all the way to Broome. So, and the idea is to basically, we want to put 80 stations across the whole state. So I will show you that stage 1, we originally started actually 5 stations from Perth to Port Hedland. Because Karratha has so many activities, we actually with Furat, we're actually working on the project right now. So we actually added Karratha to it. So basically 6 stations original to connect Perth to Pilbara, and especially port of Fremantle to the ports of Port Hedland and Dampier. So that's the idea. And the first stage, so we still sort of, we're hoping to actually, we right now we're sort of applying to get some money from federal government as well. Hopefully from state government will chip in and actually develop a project that we can develop business case and finish by the end of the year. And the second stage, basically, it's like I said earlier, across, to build across Western Australia network of stations. Okay, so look, with this is for me, this is ideal vehicle. This is Mercedes GLC F-Cell. This vehicle actually you can drive as a hydrogen vehicle, you can drive as an electric vehicle. I believe this is the future. Right now technology is too expensive, but this is the future. You need to give people option, and I can show you, this is where we stand. I have a little bit different, bit higher here than Peter. Peter, like when you were saying, the reason why, what I know from the latest 20,000 FC, which is still a very small amount, but what's happened is even one company in China, which is Horizon Fuel Cell Technology, they were building 800 vehicles a month right now, so and including trucks and vans. So, but again, all I'm trying to show you on this slide, this is nothing compared to this giant pizza. Why, you know, there's animosity between 2 camps, and some people don't want to hear about one area or another. No, we should join together, and because when you develop these 2 technologies together, you're sort of hedging your bets, you're hedging investment, government is hedging investments, because right now technology changes so quickly. You will see the battery is going to improve much more. They're going to be solid state battery, maybe glass batteries, and they're going to be far better than currently. So they're going to get a sort of one up on hydrogen. Then already people working on compounds that makes, you know, hydrogen storage 3 times better. So it's really makes people nervous even to invest money at this time. But when you invest money in the holistic thing, you know you save. So it really, you know, just this is, I'm very passionate about it, because that really, we have to take that in consideration. So look at this. This is Bloomberg. So I'm assuming they know what they're talking about. So by 2040, 60 million EVs are produced by year. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a great thing. But we got 1.4 billion vehicles in the world. How many decades is going to take us to replace it? Especially if we do it separately, if we don't work together. So it's really very important that actually, you know, we all collaborate on this. This is another one. This is not a criticism. This is reality. This is the case taken from Germany, just to show you that look, working together, it really works, because as you can see, a penetration on the top, and a small penetration and a large penetration of the vehicles. Everybody knows working in this, you're gonna have to start investing money in the grid, and there's a lot of capex that have to go in the grid once you really start building the electric vehicles. You know, the University of Melbourne done study currently with 10% of the grid only can support, grid can support only 10% of electric vehicles. So obviously there have to be huge capex done to upgrade to make the grid smart as well. So, but if you join these two technologies together, like I'm saying, you're making it safer for everybody, making it safer for government. Government hates to pick winners. They hate that, you know. So this way, you're making it safe for everybody. You're making it safe for investors. And we're actually developing zero emissions. So we're all going in the right direction. This is, I just want to show you, often I show this slide. You can see on Wikipedia, how many countries already announced they're not going to be selling gasoline or diesel vehicles. And look at the dates, although they're probably going to change a little bit, but when the hell we're going to get the cars to give it to them? If they got a whole country that says we're not going to sell the vehicles. So we really have to work together if you want to actually create enough zero emission vehicles. These are some other jurisdictions, not countries, but necessarily, but could be a city who decided, yes, we're not going to allow him. Okay, so this is really going in the right direction. So look, this one is, for me, that's a perfect example. So you can, this is just, if you can see the date is 22nd of June, 2020. So just published now. And basically this is Mercedes in Germany gets 60 plus orders for the Citaro G articulated buses, which are fully electric buses, battery buses. But as you can read this bit on the bottom, it says, from 2022, they're going to put range extenders in those buses, which are going to be fuel cells. So that's the ideal situation for me. And they're sending, the reason why they're doing that, because this technology eliminates the need for intermediate charging and the complex infrastructure required for it in almost all cases. So it's, I'm really trying to prove to everybody that this is the way we're supposed to go. And that's why, you know, with our zero emission highway, that's exactly the approach we're trying to do. And we really need collaboration of everybody, and especially the electric vehicle camp as well. So I've been trying to convince Elon Musk. I haven't succeeded yet, but I'm sure we can do it in the future. So with this, it's 4 seconds to 8, 9, 10.
Oh, very good. You're showing off now. Look at that. Hang on the 10 minutes. Thanks a lot for that, Peter.
Thanks, Charlie.
And you don't have to apologize about anything. You know, you're not arguing with anybody. It's good. You're just putting forward your views. I felt you a little bit defensive there, but it was good. Good to see. Well done for everything you're doing. Thanks for all those presentations. I've learned a lot. There's a Q&A section here. Peter, what do you want to do? Because I see some of these questions have already been answered.
Charlie, I'm sorry. There is we promised one announcement, which is actually on the topic, and one of the participants actually had an announcement. So Colleen, maybe we can ask you. Oh,
an announcement! How exciting!
Yes, we have an announcement. So yes. Colleen, are you?
Sorry, I meant to, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yes, I will, I believe it was Ian.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so if you at least sound, let. Okay,
Ian, you're allowed to talk. And anybody who wants to ask a question, raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Lovely. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to advise the group that Carbon 280, a fairly new startup, 1 year, is commercializing a magnesium hydride slurry solution to create a hydrogen storage system using the magnesium to hydride and dehydrate out of in a thermal oil. So basically, it's stored at atmospheric temperature and pressure. It has been patented in the United States for a number of years, but it didn't go anywhere because the market wasn't ready. And we've decided to take it up a higher level of technology readiness. It's currently at TRL 4. We're going to take it up all the way to 9. We've got our first foundation angel investor, and we got it during coronavirus, which was a wonderful thing. And we see it as the great opportunity to take on the long duration referred to by Furat earlier, because lithium batteries typically are maxing out at a 1 megawatt battery will be typically 1 megawatt for 1 hour. And that's 1 C. And if you want to take it longer than that, you've got to put more cells in. So this solution provides that opportunity.
Thanks,
So
Ian.
I don't want to take up any more time. I want to throw it open. If there's anybody got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I've put a little thing on the Q&A screen there.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for that. Now, Peter, are you going to unshare your screen, or are you sharing it for a reason?
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, that's my fault.
And
hang on
someone's
a
put up a poll. There's
Yeah.
loads of things going on simultaneously. So like, what's happening? You want people to tick some boxes here, and then we'll see the, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so there's a poll up there on zero carbon futures. Very good. So if people want to spend a bit of time on that. We've got about 20 minutes.
Anybody who has a question, just raise your hand and
Just
I will.
Colleen can see them and I can't. So do you want to handle the Q&A, Colleen?
Yep.
I would love to answer Peter Kaspervik if I can get a chance.
I bet you would.
Yes.
Wouldn't we all?
So Joshua, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, great to join the conversation and excellent presentations. I just wanted to ask if Lithium Valley and other groups in the discussion here are looking at broadening their support and promotional activities for sustainable mobility on the water and in the air as well. Obviously, I've got a biased motivation in those fields.
Yes, definitely. We want to work across the whole value chain in renewables and energy metals. So yes.
That's great. Thanks, Colleen.
Peter, do you want to jump in and answer Peter Kaspervat, Peter Newman?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Peter. I anticipated that you would have answers to some of those things, and certainly I'm trying to work out what is the role of hydrogen. And what I keep saying is it's not good for cities. We don't have the space to produce the hydrogen in cities, so it's going to have to be brought in, and it takes 3 times the amount of PVs to produce the hydrogen from water. So that's a waste when it could be going straight into the city and used directly. That's a problem. But it's not a problem in regions and rural areas. You've got the space to do it, and especially off the grid. So I'm totally supporting you and Firat's model, which was about you know, an Indigenous settlement and can work there, and certainly will work in the Pilbara for the industries that we desperately need to help refine fuel, our minerals into products that can be manufactured. But I don't see it helping in cities. So it's important that if we're going to have a partnership, we don't compete in the city. You said people need a choice. No, what they need is some direction about what is actually going to be the cheapest option and what works best for the city. And governments do hate to pick winners, and you're confusing them. That's the problem. They work, you get it clear where it works best. It doesn't work in cities. And it is making it hard for governments to choose something for the future when there's always this sense, oh, but it will work in the cities. It just happens to be 3 times the cost, and it's very, very hard to fit into the city. Apart from that, it's fine.
Yeah,
well,
Peter,
I just don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, no, Peter, absolutely. Like I told you, and I show in the presentation, I think the ultimate one is actually right now, there are companies that putting for delivery vans, electric delivery vans, they actually putting small fuel cells as a range extenders. Okay, so I can see this, you know, the Sora buses that were made for Olympic Games. So the Japanese spent $300 million building these buses. They also can be charged. So although they hydrogen buses, that they could be charged. So for me, that's the ultimate, that actually you have a vehicle, that you have options, what, you know, you're not stuck, it's one solution. So that's, and you know, so that's for me, that's what it is.
The only reason you do that with a bus is that you're going to take it out into the countryside where it can't be refueled quickly and easily. Recharging of buses can be done, and the trackless tram, you can do it at stations in 30 seconds and at the end of the route in 10 minutes and overnight at the depot. The hydrogen, the the hydrogen side of that is not helpful in the city. If you want to take your buses out, and certainly we do that, that's one of the things we'll have to do in Western Australia. But that's a very, very minor role to take buses out into the countryside. It is not going to help the city. That's all I'm saying. Get the priority right and let's get on with it here. We still don't have a plan to electrify our buses. Everyone else is well underway on that. I'm in the advisory committee for Canberra to electrify their buses. It's very cheap to do it. And when they put PVs on the rooftops of the depots, they could make most of the money back, not from just the recharge system, but from the grid stabilisation services that they use, because they are helping with the storage and recharge, the V2G and so on that comes from their depots. So all of that is happening very quickly and it's cheap. We don't have the options yet for hydrogen in the city, but let's get on and do the demonstrations out there in the bush and let's get them up and running.
Yeah, no, Peter.
We can't keep going on this one topic. We have Colleen, do you have someone else to ask a question?
It took government to actually 1 year only 1 year to develop hydrogen policy, not just for transport, but hydrogen policy. Yet it's really hard to develop policy for electric vehicles. As you know, they've been, council been trying for a long time. Working together, going to be much easier to do that. That's all I want to say.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from JP.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can.
Great, thank you. This is for any and all of the panelists, and it does carry forward from this conversation that Peter and Peter are having. I'm curious from the trend perspective, particularly post-COVID, what your sense is about whether we are going to ultimately concentrate in cities or move away from cities. Because it seems to me to be very much in question as we come out of the first phase of this, and there may be future phases of it, as we enter this phase of deep uncertainty, both regionally and globally. That's for anyone.
Peter, probably that's you, Dave.
Yeah, that's my area of research and has been for many years about cities and why they work and why they don't work, and how we can make them better. And certainly COVID raises questions, and for me, it is coming out to be about relocalizing in our settlements. Now, the relocalizing was what we had to do. We were at home, we could walk and get to a bike to local services. And we needed more of those local services, and it's possible to do. So we could do more relocalizing in our cities, but also in our rural settlements, which are very much scattered with cars as well. You don't have rural villages much anymore. They just scatter, and they're very vulnerable now, particularly in forested areas, to fires and the heat stress that comes from living in those areas. The issue of relocalizing and making local services and having lots of these local micro-mobility systems that can easily get people around small areas, that I think is a major shift into the future, and one that is being facilitated by governments who are now putting a lot of money into these local walking, cycling, micro-mobility facilities and paths and recharge spots for them, because they all are going to need recharge. And that's one of the key things that I've taken from this. But I don't think cities as a whole are going to dissipate, and they still provide most of the opportunities, and the future of cities has often been stated to be uncertain because of the problems they create. But most people move to them out of rural areas because they provide opportunities for work, for health, for education, for all of the services that cities provide.
If I could just add on to that, Peter, I mean, I'm talking today from the Chamber of Commerce in Collie. And Collie obviously is a regional town, for those that don't know it, about 200 kilometres from Perth, and really has been the heart of our energy system in Western Australia since 1896, when the first lump of coal was found down here. And Collie is going through a huge transition at the moment in a post-carbon energy system. We have a lot of grid infrastructure down here. Collie sits right in between the town of Greenbushes and Kemerton and Kwinana. And there is a lot of infrastructure down here, and one of the projects that's been very successful to develop alternative industries down here has been the cycle paths around the Wellington Dam precinct, because obviously Collie is surrounded by a beautiful bushscape and fantastic agriculture products. So, but at the primary issue down here is the fact that we need jobs, you know, and country communities now. And whereas we're very focused to try and build the power systems infrastructure for electric vehicles in regional areas around WA, you know, it is the surrounding economy that's required to get cars to drive out to those areas. And if that's mining at the moment or agriculture, you know, we really see the energy infrastructure and renewable energy to make that transport easier to travel to regional areas and make it cheaper and allow people to be more mobile, because we are fuel independent and we're generating that energy locally. But obviously I'd just like to add the Collie name once again, because we have regional areas in WA that are struggling with these things and would love more people to move down into the regional areas and have lots to offer. So, but it is about bringing industry with it so that there is employment and economic well-being as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, we have another question from Ian Porter.
Hi, hi, Peter. Peter Newman, Professor Peter Newman. Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there with regions. What we're seeing in our modelling is that if you're competing with diesel at 80 cents, which is typically what you're going to find if it's 500 k's around Perth, you can't get into those microgrids easy with diesel, with hydrogen, except for the large trucks where you do need this refueling, fast refueling issue, which you can't do with, of course, with lithium. So my question is this Japanese conundrum, where the Japanese are the largest customers for LNG exports at the moment, and they're planning on decarbonizing their economies, and they're looking at offtake agreements, which I understand that one WA company in the Midwest are planning to export with liquefied hydrogen to Japan. And the Asian Renewable Energy Hub up in Karratha are planning to do the same. And they're looking at liquefied ammonia, or supercritical ammonia. Now, to me, the whole thing just doesn't add up, because you've got two different concepts from two different contractors or two different developers, and they're sending it to a city. There are 33 regasification facilities in Japan for LNG, and one of the off-takers, interestingly enough, is Toyota. So why would Toyota want to bring liquefied hydrogen to Japan? Is it one of these projects that is going to go nowhere, or does it have merit?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And all power to you, mate, with this magnesium hydride. It sounds brilliant, and we really need that because the trans, being able to get the stuff, distribute hydrogen around is a big issue. We don't have a very simple solution to that, and we need one. But in Asia, the main markets for hydrogen seem to be Korea and Japan, where they have made actual commitments to their electorates that they will decarbonise their industries. And that's the major destination for them, not the transport system. The main thing is to be able to process their major industries, whether they're making cement or iron or processing other minerals. And hydrogen is a reducing agent. You can put it in and do what coal does, but do it very, very cleanly. So they want clean hydrogen. They do not want this hydrogen from gas or oil, which is what we're using in the hydrogen at the moment. It's coming from the BP refinery. This is not acceptable for the future. It can't be. It has to be made from solar, and they can make that in the Pilbara with large-scale hydrogen electrolyzing water and exporting it in some form. And hopefully your magnesium hydride could be a solution there. But however it is to get there, it's not essentially a transport device for them. We work closely with Toyota because they're part of IPCC on our committee. And what they have told us is that the reason that Toyota went for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles was essentially a political one. After the tsunami, they needed to have mobile power systems that could easily and quickly move to an area and provide immediate source of power. And the hydrogen fuel cells are ideal for that. And so it's not the same as what we're planning for a normal transport system. They've not yet been able to break through and provide something that is not anything less than 3 times the cost of a lithium-ion battery lighter vehicle, or even to a bus. The buses work better with lithium-ion batteries. So getting into long-haul stuff, that's a different market, different possibilities. But the main reason that Asia is after our hydrogen, if we can provide it, is for the industry sources. And we really should be processing our iron ore in the Pilbara. Why send both of them to Japan to process? We can manufacture steel in the Pilbara.
Yes, and Peter, what's very interesting, you make a good point, and Roscoe Arnault is, of course, as you know, a big proponent in his Energy Superpower book. What I find very interesting is that hydrogen, when it's created with electrolysis, it's never mentioned. But on the other side of on the anode, you've got oxygen. And what do they use in steel making? Is oxygen. So why are we not doing this?
Yeah, okay. I must admit I haven't seen that mentioned very often either.
Can I add?
Yes, please. Farhat, come in.
Yeah. I completely agree with all what being discussed, but we have to remember something. Like Professor Peter mentioned that in the city, electric will do, and like batteries will do. The issue is, if we're going to charge those electric machineries or vehicles from a coal-fired power plant, that's okay. But if we want to do it from renewable energy, then we have to charge when the renewable is there, or otherwise we have to store that renewable energy in batteries, which is bigger than the batteries on the buses and the vehicles, just ready for those buses to be charged when they have to be charged. Because most of the buses and vehicles will be used when the sun is shining. So will be charged overnight. Now, there's another issue, is how big is the infrastructure required for fast charging? That's not really available anywhere in the city. And if we imagine half of the vehicles now just want to charge now at the same time, then the grid won't handle. So that's when the hydrogen play this intermediate kind of role to store that energy to when we require that energy. Instead of putting big batteries everywhere we need to charge to store the renewable energy, to shift it hourly or daily or seasonally sometimes. So hydrogen can play a very big role in storing energy. Now, if we move to the other stage of using oxygen from electrolysis, well, oxygen can be used in water treatment and so many different areas, but hydrogen itself, it's a viable commodity. So can be used because the export now, the export avenues is not ready yet. We don't know if we're going to send it as a liquefied or compressed gas or like any other way, or even convert it to ammonia, green ammonia, or toluene, or all these carriers. So instead of thinking just to start export now, and because we cannot export, so we won't start producing, we can actually use it locally for green steel and green aluminum and green fertilizers and these sort of things, then export the products. So create jobs locally and utilize the hydrogen. And at the same time, when you produce hydrogen in that big quantities, then it is viable to convert the whole energy system and the economy to a hydrogen economy all over Australia. That's my point.
Never happened. Never going to happen.
Can I just say, Furat, I mean, one of the issues that we deal with frequently is actually the distribution system. It's not necessarily the grid infrastructure, but it's in our buildings. And I mean, you know, there are certainly superchargers available that can top a car up in 7 minutes. But when we look at the latest data across large charging networks from companies like Lithium that have 3,000 chargers operational, actually the period of charging is much shorter than we expect. The general top up is, 20 minutes at an average of 20 kilowatts. So, because the reality is that most people charge their vehicles at home overnight and the battery is never empty. So, from our perspective, really the type of storage medium, we're quite agnostic. Even a fuel cell vehicle is still an electric vehicle. It still requires a lithium battery to provide peaking power to deliver the power to the drivetrain. And the reality is that it is always going to be a mix of technologies, and what's really required at the moment is the control system. Whether it's in the charging machine, whether it's in the car, timing of charging and the balancing or the virtual power plant that regulates between bulk storage of hydrogen, long storage of hydrogen compared to peaking power. It will be a marriage of several technologies that provides the overall system stability.
Mm-hmm.
That's very helpful.
On our innovation hub, that's the point that we've actually acknowledged in terms of managing loads and charging. It's essential, and so we're trying to bring this to the attention. For instance, the battery CRC, that it's not just about the cell; it's about how the system works and the charging and discharging of those systems.
That's right. And, just to add on again, because Colleen, Furat mentioned aluminium. We've had extensive discussions with Roscana about the potential to use our southwest interconnected grid, and a combination of hydrogen, renewable energy and lithium storage to support existing industries. And I think, again, that is really just a scaled up version of a control system. But the reality is that, a lot of our focus is in Karratha and focus towards the export and, obviously the export dollars that go with it. But we can't forget our local grid, our local cars, our local community and our local industries here in the Southwest, because We've got so much potential to pilot and demonstrate these technologies for the benefit of the West Australian community for daily use, rather than only thinking about the export potential.
We've got to close this all up now. And we're going to finish with a final thought. And I mean thought, not a big treatise, a 30-second thought from each of the panelists. Masood, I'm going to start with you because we haven't heard from you in the Q&A. You've been very good sitting back, listening to everybody. So just a final thought on the last couple of hours, because I like to finish on time, and we've got about 5 minutes left, and then we'll finish off with Peter, I think, rounding everything off. Yes, Peter? So okay. Masood, do go with your final thought.
Yes, my final thought is that this is all wonderful that we are talking about different sources of energy. Of course, batteries at the moment are the front runners, and we're using them now. However, hydrogen, I can see that there are lots of applications for hydrogen, and that can plug into a standalone power system. Okay, whatever the efficiencies are, it depends on the circumstances how you're going to use them. So I think hydrogen and batteries can go together very nicely.
Thanks, Masood. Farhat, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my final thought is hydrogen economy is coming, and we're going to depend on hydrogen for all base load generation. Batteries will complete the picture and deal with the quick and fast reactions or response for the fluctuations. So they both complete each other instead of competing, but hydrogen will be the base. Thank you.
Great. Colleen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, look, I think both opportunities, both hydrogen and batteries, are excellent opportunities for Western Australia and Australia. And I think, we actually have the capacity and the ability to actually lead in this particular area. We've got the resources, we've got the workforce, we've got the intelligence, and I think it's really exciting that this is all happening now and we're having these conversations because the number of companies that are coming from overseas to want to be in Western Australia, including green steel, believe it or not, is quite significant. So I think we will lead this moving into the future.
Great, thanks, Colleen. And Florian, do you want to go next? And I see there are still 5 live questions on the Q&A. So one from Paul Christensen, then Craig Buckley, Neil Salam. So if anyone wants to jump in and answer those panelists, please do. But Florian, over to you.
Look, I think it's just going to take a lot of collaboration between associations like Lithium Valley, EMUs, and the great work they do, government and the business sector. And we can't wait for big business to come and take the lead in this. I think it's about starting small and using local knowledge and demonstrating and piloting this technology here in WA with our universities, because that's where we learn and that's how it grows.
Thanks, Florian. Peter Newman, would you like to, final thought from you, sir?
Yeah, Farhat said the hydrogen economy is going to take over. I would say no, it's not, because hydrogen thermodynamically has a problem. It needs 3 times the amount of PV to deliver the hydrogen from water. So why not use that PV immediately where it's created, which is what we're doing in our cities. Rooftop PV, you can use it now. We don't have to wait, or we don't have to create hydrogen and then use it in some way. So don't confuse it. Lithium won in the cities. It hasn't won in the bush. Focus on the bush. Don't confuse the cities.
Thanks, Peter. And Peter Kasperczak, the final word. I think you're going to close off today's Innovation Summit with you.
As you know, I have to respectfully disagree a little bit.
Nothing wrong about respectful disagreement. That's okay.
Look, it's currently like we have diesel and petrol. Okay, you got diesel cars, petrol cars. Petrol cars are usually light cars. Okay, that's going to be equivalent of battery vehicles. Diesel, heavy trucks, machinery. Okay, so that's going to be hydrogen. At least today, with today's technology, This might change, of course, but in my view, we not only should work together, we must work together in order to bring the zero emission. The policies should be worked together, it should be developed together. So that's my view.
Thanks for those closing thoughts. Who's going to wrap it all up? Peter, are you going to finish it off?
Yes, so look.
Thank everybody. Thank your sponsors and thank your organizers. And Peter and Colleen, thanks for putting it together. And thanks for a great panel and thanks for those questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for participating, especially Colleen Yates, who Regional Development Australia, who is our partner in organizing those events for many years, for over 5 years now. So thank you, Colleen, and for all the technical stuff, because Colleen as a sponsor also provide the Zoom capability actually for this. So thanks to all the speakers. So really appreciate. I hope, Peter, you still like me. Just different views. So I really appreciate. Look, it's good to have a discussion. Look, I do appreciate when people have different views. You know, just but that's what, you know, we wouldn't achieve anything if everybody was doing the same thing.
And when's the next event? Are we going to have in-person events again?
Absolutely. Look, definitely we're going to have, well, definitely, you never know what's going to happen. But if everything going this way, for sure, I can tell you that our Hydrogen Day, which is 8th of October, that definitely we're planning in-person event. And we also encouraging anybody who is listening, who is interested in hydrogen, to actually organize another event at that same day. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for everybody to participating. And yeah, we hope to do it again soon.
And thank you also to everyone. And for those who want to follow on with the Lithium Valley story, as I said, we've got the launch on the 23rd of July. So hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.